Appreciate you being here. My name is Matt, as always, and coming to us from Houston is my brother Ken. Say hello, Ken.
Peace and long life.
There we go. Yeah. Greetings. We are the Brothers Trek About, and this week we are trekking all over The Devil in the Dark. Oh boy, it sounds scary, but it's not really at all scary. In fact, it's a nice alien, but we'll get there quickly enough, I promise you. Perfect. Excellent. Well, this episode all came about because of a Hungarian immigrant who went to Hollywood. He was a stuntman for a while and made a career dressed as apes. His name was Janos, which is funny because that's also the name of the new guy who's playing Chewbacca. So that's funny, except I think the new Janos has two O's or something. It's a different spelling. But anyway, so this guy went to the producers of Star Trek and said, hey, if I can come up with a really cool monster, will you guys use it and pay me to be the monster? And they were basically like, yeah, sure, go ahead. That's cool. So Janos comes into the office a couple days later, asks Gene Roddenberry, Gene Kuhn, Robert Justman, and DC Fontana all to come outside the building. You know, that's not a little bit scary, let's be honest, right? Hey, no, really, it's out in the street. It's outside the studio, but don't worry, it's going to be cool. It takes all of them out.
Mecca.
Yeah, right, exactly. They're like, we can't even get that in the studio. So they go down onto the street, and suddenly this blob comes skittering up from around the corner and heads straight for us, and then it stops, and then it backs away. And then it kind of rotates in space. And then it backs away and it drops a baby. One of the little circle dealies that, is the silicone babies or eggs from this episode. Robert Justman was kind of dumbfounded by it all. He was like, that's pretty awesome. And Kuhn loved the fact that he could have babies on screen. He thought that was a pretty cool thing. Kuhn was like, I think I can write something about this. And so that afternoon, he goes in, writes up a treatment, sends it off to Robert Justman. Justman makes a couple of minor tweaks to it that he thought needed to be done. And he says, hey, if you could write this up as fast as you can, that would be great. Because in the background, they still have Harlan Ellison's The City on the Edge of Forever. Still not a workable script. Barry Trivers' script called The Portrait of Black and White. Paul Schneider's Tomorrow the Universe. Theodore Sturgeon's work on Amok Time. None of these things are ready to go. None of them have even hit the rewrite process of either Kuhn or Roddenberry. So they're kind of like, yeah, we really need another script now. And if you remember in the last episode, I was talking about how Justman was pretty much like, we got nothing. So the sooner we can get anything, the better. All right, fixed. Good. Okay. Kuhn writes up his first draft that afternoon. Decides to sit on it for a day before he sends it off to NBC. Looks at Justman's notes, makes a couple of the smaller tweaks, but one of the big tweaks that he didn't make was that he, and tell me if this doesn't sound familiar, wanted the show to start with the Enterprise getting hit in a meteor shower and then being hurt so much that it had to sort of limp its way over to the next system. If that sounds familiar, it's because the last three teleplays that Kuhn has come up with, he's tried to start every episode with that. And it did not work. Then either. It's just too expensive. How are you going to do meteoroids in, on a 60s budget? Kuhn writes the first and second drafts of the teleplays in December, within days of one another. You might ask, hey, how is Gene Kuhn writing so fast? Well, Kuhn's secretary, Andy Richardson, said, well, he liked amphetamines. That's it. It really contributed to him grinding his teeth and being all grim looking. He was under a lot of pressure at the time, but that was how he was able to write The Devil in the Dark so fast. He finished it in 4 days, both drafts. It was done so fast and good enough that not only did NBC like it, but that Justman was happy with it, that it bypassed. It's the only script ever to bypass a Roddenberry rewrite or a DC Fontana rewrite and go write the script. Not much on the actors in this episode. None of them went on to do much of anything else, but all of the main actors in this episode were, big guest stars during the 60s, all on the shows and all the stuff that you would have seen. Also, a lot of the crew members that were in this episode on Kirk's squad were also stand-ins, like Eddie Paskey, for instance, who we have talked about, who is Kirk's stand-in, is also is in this episode as well. But I will say this: Brad Weston, who is cast as Appel, was the only miner to see the creature and live. You remember him from the episode. He was cast in this episode, and then Roddenberry, after seeing it, was like, I kind of like that guy. I'm looking for another younger male actor to fill in the regular cast in hopes of, getting more teens to watch the show. Why don't you tell me a little bit about him? What do you know about him? What's his background? What's his ability? Blah, blah, blah. Of course, that character would go on to be cast as Walter Koenig and as Pavel Chekhov. So didn't work out for poor Appel in this one. But there you go. A couple of other minor trivia notes to go on before we get started in this episode. This marks the first and only time that an episode of Star Trek, the original series, begins without the Enterprise or its crew being involved in the teaser scenes before the main credits. Interesting. In addition, it is also the only episode of the original series that has no female speaking parts. I read that and I thought back and I was like, wow, yeah, I guess
it's all minors.
Women. Yeah, it's all the minors. None of their wives.
They don't need wives.
That's right, exactly.
That's a different mining problem.
That's what Mud's there for.
That's right.
Also, principal photography of this episode started Monday, January 16th, 1967. This is important to know only because it was the day after the very first Super Bowl was played. Thought that was kind of cool. So everything was going along swimmingly well in this episode when it came to the production of it. Filming continued at a brisk pace. Boom, they're moving along with it. When suddenly, during the morning hours, everything was interrupted by the sad news that William Shatner's father had died in Florida on this day, day 3, January 18th. Leonard Nimoy recalls, the producers told him, go ahead and leave, They were making immediate arrangements for him to get on a plane, but Bill just shook his head and gritted his teeth and said, no, we're in the middle of the scene. I'm going to finish it before I walk off the set. Nimoy goes on to say, D. Kelly and I both said, no, it's okay, just leave, Bill, just go ahead. But he was determined to finish the scene. And though the tension on the set was almost unbearable, as we were all helplessly watching him struggle to get it done, it was a tough, emotional afternoon. But there was nothing for him to do except remain close by. Shatner even goes on to say that, he was really thankful that Nimoy was close. He's stayed physically close to him almost the whole day just to sort of help him get through. Eddie Paskey himself said he didn't even know what had happened. He's, Kirk's up there giving his speech about going back and forth, telling him hey, we got to catch this thing. We got to make sure we shoot it and kill it, blah, blah, blah. And it wasn't until after the scene was done that did any of the other people on the set find out. So there you go. On day 4, Shatner was gone. He had left the night before on a plane. So Peabody shot all the remaining scenes that didn't involve Kirk, and then the cast and crew were excused. So now the production was suddenly a day behind. Day 5, nobody was on set because, there's nothing else they could shoot.
Except the Horta. He had a lot more tunnels to make.
Yes, exactly. Insurance paid for that one, which I thought was really interesting. Day 6, Shatner returns. Peabody said he managed really great. Obviously he still had some problems with a couple of lines, but for the most part, he was better than I would have been. P&E went on to say that when my wife died, I was a complete mess and couldn't do anything. Day 8, the morning hours were spent finishing Vandenberg's office, and then moved to stage 9 for a pair of brief scenes on the ship's bridge at the end. That is that. And then they finished 2 days late, basically. But we'll get into all the numbers like we always do at the end of this episode once we've talked about it. So, as always, let's get to it.
Captain's log. Stardate.
It's 5-year mission.
Stardate 3196.1. Our first shot here is it's a mine or an underground factory. It's sort of hard to tell.
Looks fantastic. It's like a city.
Yeah, well, this is, again, I did if you look online, you can always see the comparison videos of what the episode originally looked like and what it looked like, after they did the CG and stuff. And it was really interesting because in this one, the hand-drawn mat just doesn't quite work if you look at it. It looks obviously hand-drawn is basically what it is compared to the other one, which actually looks, like you said, looks pretty great. So we're in the mine. We see a guy with a phaser walking through. By the way, this was also added. That little pan in to the little guy was also added in the new CGI updates. He meets up with some other workers. They're all looking kind of scared. We find out some people have died here. We don't quite know what's going on. So then this one main guy is talking. He's like Joe from Jersey or something. He's like total blue collar. Which is nice. It's kind of, setting up the viewers of the 60s, letting you know who these miner guys are, right? They're total little blue collar guys. And, we hear that 50 guys have died. But we need to keep somebody on security. And this guy is the guy who's left to it by himself. No other guys to help him out or to back him up. No, just one guy being left alone in the cave by himself with a hand phaser. Hope it's enough. And then the show spends a lot of time, a good 15, 20 seconds watching this guy just circle the room, Nowadays, you'd be like, why are we wasting precious seconds on watching this guy, But it's the 60s. We can do whatever we want. And what's even funnier is just that it fits, too, because for this guy who's scared out of his mind, this 15 seconds has already felt like 5 minutes have passed. You know what I mean? It's the longest 15 seconds of his life waiting for this whatever, hoping he doesn't see anything, but scared to death. But luckily he doesn't have to wait too long because then he sees it. He's too scared to fire, and it attacks. The men were just down the hallway. They come running back in, and all they see is him burnt to a crisp. Dun, dun, dun. To the credits. Back at it. Before we get back at it, this is a question I had. So we heard them talk about the Enterprise coming, right? The scared guy is I heard the Enterprise is coming. Is it true? So the question I have is is the Enterprise that famous that everybody's oh boy, it's the Enterprise coming? Or is
the
this
wolf?
Just
all you had to tell me is that the wolf is coming.
Exactly. Or are we just, or are they just excited that any ship is coming and they just happen to hear the name? Which one do you think that is?
Probably a combination of both. Because on the one hand, you got a ship coming. You're going to say, hey, I hear they're sending in a ship, whatever. And you may say its name. On the other hand, we as the audience are going to be invested in one particular ship, the Enterprise. So to get that sense, from the audience that our ship is on the way, our team, our crew, not just I hear they're sending someone. Yeah, some guys. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, right. Up. Exactly.
I hope they're helpful.
I hope they're bringing lots of guns.
Yeah. Oh, wrong ship. No. We're an engineering ship. We're just here to build things and take things apart.
Exactly. So we hear the captain's log, but we're not on the Enterprise. We see Spock, Bones, and McCoy beam down. They are immediately, very quickly greeted, and without a word shown to Vandenberg. We're here about the monster and the damage that it's caused. We also hear that this rock that they're mining, I couldn't quite catch the name. It's like a Pertilium, sure. But it's good. It can be. It's a very valuable rock because it can be replaced for so many things. And there's a list, but I didn't catch them all. And so then this guy he pulls out this map, right? That that has a map of the whole. I don't know, all 23 levels. I don't know what this is supposed to be a map of. It's a map, but he pulls it out like it's on a big chalkboard. It's not a computer screen. It's not a data pad showing us where all this is. No, it's a big board. I guess it was easier for the miners.
Fortunately, we got a printer down here.
Yes, exactly. But I guess when you're corporate, they can't spring for things like like computer screens and tablets and such.
I don't know, but they can set up a printer. We're gonna send you a printer and 2 printers apprentices to set up a press on level 12,
so that you can do all these maps and stuff yourself.
That's right.
That's right.
Need to send that out. Or have a computer which could double for every other possible use.
Yes, exactly. Even for this one, which is great. So this is when Oedipal.
It's funny because it shows the limitations of the way people think about stuff. Because you could have put the exact same map behind some glass with looks like it's got a panel, and we would have bought it as a computer display, right? I mean, today we look at it and go, I don't know, cheesy computer or whatever. But you go, it's a computer, okay.
Yeah.
And then I think the audience would have just gone, oh, look, that's a computer. But instead we get this paper map that just shows that they weren't thinking, oh, computers are used for everything. You order pizza on a computer.
Oedipal comes in.
I think in Star Trek, if you're going to order computer, you'd go to a panel and turn some knobs, right? Settings, pepperoni. I'm going to dial some extra cheese here. What size do you want? Click, click, click. I'm going to get a large.
Delicious. All right. Oedipal comes in, says that he's actually seen the creature, but he can't really describe it. He doesn't seem to like Starfleet too much either. He says, oh, you think you're so strong with your phaser banks? You can't get your ship down here. Okay, whatever, man. I got phasers. It's cool. So Spock asks about this ball that's on the table. We find out it's this silicone nodule. There are millions of them down there, says Vandenberg. But I didn't bring you here to collect rocks, he says. Okay, whatever. McCoy returns from his rather quick autopsy. Oh, everyone else leaves, by the way. That's important to know. Because McCoy returns with his rather quick autopsy. He says that he was not burned to death, but it looks more like a big chemical burn, some sort of corrosive acid. Kirk says, strong enough to burn through some metal? Or anything else you can think of, scoffs McCoy. Spock looks at the map and says that if all these times are to be believed, the creature would have to move at quite an accelerated rate to make it through that all those hallways. And while they scanned for life, there is nothing but only residents of the colony there. At least, he says, life as we know it. Spock, that's 2, by the way. We've had 2 now from the song that have made it into the actual show.
It's life, Spock, but not as we know it. Not as we know it, Captain.
Spock decides to make the creature appear, by, he's like, there's got to be a way to get it out here, out in the open. If only they could have an idea of what it is. Then, all of a sudden, another death is seen. Oh, no! The creature moves away, and a corrosive trail is left behind him, steaming. Meanwhile, Vandenberg comes back and gives some important piece of information at just the right moment. And then they hear the scream. The red alert hits. And for some reason, he has this button on the door. This is the second time I noticed this. He has a button on his desk that'll open the door. I don't know why. It seems unnecessary. But anyway, they have that button. And so they rush down to the reactor. And inside, they find that a cooling pump has been compromised. And that without it, the whole reactor is going to go boom. Funny piece of trivia right here that this prop used to depict the damaged reactor for the colony was previously used in the damaged Enterprise transporter circuit during the Enemy Within. So we've seen that before.
It's a very versatile piece of equipment.
Right, yes, exactly. And so, by the way, just in case anyone at home doesn't know what a reactor does, Vandenberg goes on to tell us, how important the reactor is by giving us a list of like 8 things that this reactor does, and it's all things that you would expect a reactor to do, like, give heat and electricity and the air that's down there and, hot showers and laundry, and it keeps the beer cold and all these things that it apparently does. So good for Vandenberg to give us that list. Otherwise, we'd be so lost. Are you being eaten by a creature over there?
No, just getting my piece of technology here, which I will be using to cool off my reactor.
Yes, exactly. It says tech on it, so it must be a real piece.
That's my technology.
Yes, clearly.
It can also solve Heisenberg compensator problems, and I can use it to recharge the shields.
Well, if you were Scotty, I would believe that you could actually do that, but...
It's because it's technology right here.
Yes.
Which is kind of what they're doing. They're just like, let's just, make up something that looks cool and futuristic, and it's phlebotinum, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's whatever we needed to do.
So even stranger here, Kirk asks if they have a backup, and they don't. And neither does the ship. I mean, that kind of makes more sense. But Spock was like, well, we wouldn't have anything that antiquated.
Yeah, but it's like, you need a water pump. That's what it is, right?
Yeah.
It's like, well, we could use our super cool water pump. It'll actually pump 10 times as much water as necessary at 1/3 the energy. But, yeah, that'll keep it cool. Real cool.
Yeah. But my thought is like, if it is so antiquated, isn't that all the more reason you need to have a backup of it?
Yeah.
I mean, come on, people. What's going on here? And then, Kirk's like, I can't believe you don't know.
Right?
Go
You
ahead.
could have gone, we lost the backup a week ago to the monster.
Yes, exactly.
You'd be like, whoa, well.
Well, that makes more sense.
Yeah.
And then what's great is that, Kirk's like upset because they don't have a backup. And and then Vandenberg says, well, we've never had a problem before. And I'm like, that is all the more reason, buddy. That is all the more reason you should be like on eBay trying to find a new water pump for this old thing, this old reactor. Anyway, Kirk says,
these are the problems that you run into when you write a script in 4 days on speed.
Yes, exactly. That's so true. Well, that's the funny thing, because that's not the only thing I noticed in this episode, but again, we will get there. So then Kirk, gives the dire, well, it looks like we don't have much of a choice. It's either death by asphyxiation or death by radiation.
I love that.
Well, hey. Okay, great. As we go to commercial, by the way, we're going to leave it on that. We're going to leave it on that note. Back to it.
What they've done, so far they've been discussing the monster as if it's animalistic, right?
Right.
And at this point, he presents this dilemma that they've been put into, as if by accident, right? As if like a dog knocking over the trash can. Oh, and he spilled out something that's either going to asphyxiate us or irradiate us.
Yep, exactly.
We got to clean it up right now. But that dilemma suggests, it's foreshadowing that, in fact, the monster is not a mere animal, but an intelligence.
Well, clearly, I knew to take out the cooling pump.
And that cooling pump was like the key to driving the humans off the planet.
Yeah. Well, the reactor itself. Well, so in an original version of the script, he actually took one of the cooling rods out of the thing, but their research department was like, well, then you'd blow up the planet. Like, that wouldn't help anybody, and it's certainly not going to help the poor Flora Horta keep his his people alive, because he's not. They're gonna all blow up thanks to this reactor. So that's why they changed it and made it a cooling pump. So back to it from commercial. Scott is telling us that they don't have anything that could fit that cooling pump. I haven't seen anything like that in 20 years, he says. But Scott decides he can probably rig up something, you know.
Yeah, this is like we find a 57 Chevy, right? The engine's blown, or maybe the carburetor's cracked, and you've got all these engineers and scientists, and no one's like, all we've got are like 2017 Volkswagen engines. We have no way to make this car go because we can't fix the 1957 Chevy. Oh, well, no one's like, well, with all these engineers, you can't like pull out this engine, put that engine in, and like figure out a way to make it work. Nope, sorry. No matter how many engineers we got, that can't be done. I'm like, okay.
Whatever you say, guys.
If only we had a printer.
A 3D printer.
Yeah,
that could probably make us one that we could at least tide us over until. Then, story-wise, they give it to us all again. What's at stake? 12 planets need our help. Reactors are closing. People are going crazy. They need this Pitney rock or whatever it's called. To which Vandenberg... Necessarium, exactly. Phlebotinum. But Vandenberg comes back with, I only care about that my people are dying here, Kirk.
Or maybe it's MacGuffinite.
MacGuffinite, yes. Yes. So Spock decides that he might have the answer. What if life here is based on silicone? So again, we got the DeForest group. I don't think we've talked about them before, but the DeForest group is basically their research committee. They're the ones who tell us like if their science is like accurate or if their science is like right. They basically say that like silicon life isn't impossible. Like there are a lot of studies in it. It has to be sustained. It would have to develop under conditions of extreme heat, perhaps environments comparable to the planet Mercury. It could not possibly exist in an oxygen atmosphere. But again, having written this in 4 days, there was no way he could go back and like rewrite the episode. So hence these next few lines here between Kirk and McCoy and Nimoy, where he's like, look, it's only a hypothesis. I don't know really what's going on. It's the only opportunity we have. It's possible that this isn't going to work, but so that's what this whole scene was written for, is just so that he could help keep the science at least, a little bit on the nose.
The idea of silicon isn't, so, McCoy responds, that's crazy. It's impossible.
Well, it's impossible. It's impossible in the oxygen atmosphere. That's the impossible part of it.
But they brought the oxygen atmosphere.
Yeah.
The planet is apparently unlivable without this reactor, creating
for humans. Yeah. So because that's actually what then, Spock goes on to say, well, maybe he can survive in an oxygen atmosphere for a few minutes.
He's basically holding his breath, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Did he kill someone? He's back to toxicity.
So it's funny because I don't know. I don't want to make these assumptions based on what I do know. Obviously, we know that, Shatner lost his father in this episode, and I don't know personally what scenes were shot before and what scenes were shot afterwards.
No, I think he did a great job. There's no sense that like his acting is off kilter. In fact,
exactly.
I think it's one of the best Captain Kirk episodes.
Uh-huh.
In the sense that it presents the captain as decision maker. He's given this classic dilemma in which he has so up until now and for a few more minutes, the miners are going to be like putting all this pressure, right? This is necessarium. 12 planets need it. All my miners are, at risk. So many men have died so far. You must kill the monster. And Kirk is on board with that. Like, well, we've been brought in to solve the problem. The problem apparently means killing the monster. I'm going to do my job.
Yeah.
And then Spock begins to raise these issues. Maybe this isn't what we think it is. Maybe there's more here than meets the eye. Maybe this is life. Maybe it's worth thinking about or exploring, or and for a while, Kirk is no, we got a mission. But when confronted by it, Kirk is flexible. He's not dogmatic. He's gotten this input, and he's able to. He doesn't really flip positions.
He gets more information though.
Right. I mean, he doesn't completely adopt Spock's position. Right.
True.
But he does realize that the Spock position has enough of the truth here that we are gonna switch to preserve the Horta rather than kill the Horta.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, he's got a lot of stuff to work with here, and I think he does a great job.
Yeah. Well, since we're talking about this specific subject of like, one of the things that Cushman brings up in his book is the idea of, so first of all, this is totally flips the normal idea of what we do in these episodes, right? Part of the reason they're calling it a monster, the first, part of this episode is because, they're really trying to set up like, okay, it's a scary creature and blah, 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 only to have that flipped then at the end by saying, no, we need to help this creature. We need to protect it. We can live side by side for it. Everything that happens at the end of this episode. So Cushman then goes on to ask the question like, well, what would happen? So Gene Kuhn basically in this episode has said, this is what the mission of these people is, right? So we've now had a couple of episodes in a row where Kuhn has sort of like laid out exactly what the mission of the Enterprise is about. We're here to help people. We're here to, solve the problems. We're here to, make everybody better and, all the Roddenberry things. And so...
As I think I mentioned, at the beginning of the series, it's all in the mission statement at the beginning of the episode. What are we here to do? Seek out new life. Here it is.
Yeah. Here it is, new life. Stuff we didn't know before. Silicone at that. But the question he then begs, the author then begs is, how different would the man trap have been? Because it seems like that whole episode, it's like, we got to kill it. It's the last of its kind, like the Horta. Like, isn't it interesting how, like, now the Kuhn is on board, how it's changed, how, Kirk even reacts to creatures that are the last of its kind or any of those things. So I thought that was a really interesting point because...
Yeah. I mean, so...
He's not really out to save the man trap, the creature in the man trap at the end.
But part of the problem is that it continues to be aggressively predatory.
That's true.
In a way that the Horta seems to be much more defensive, just wants to protect its young, and is wounded. Whereas the Salt monster continues killing crew members going after Salt. And
they could just throw him on like some silicone blaze, or not silicone, but like some salt-based planet. Throw him on Crate or whatever at the end of The Last Jedi.
Right.
Where the whole top layer is salt, and she could eat her the rest of her life.
And it's not like delivering salt would be some kind of a problem in terms of long-term, coexistence.
Yeah.
But that creature never engages in dialogue, even though it seems to be capable of all the things you think necessary to communicate. It engages in speech. It can adopt a friendly-looking, persona and say, listen, here's my situation. I just need salt. And if you just guys, just give me some salt, I'd be cool with whatever else you guys are doing. Listen, the doctor and I have gotten along, fine. As long as I got the salt, I'm cool. If I don't get the salt, I get a little crazy. Gotta admit.
Fair.
Whereas here, the Horta, at first you think, well, how would they communicate with it? It's impossible, right?
Yeah. It's got no mouth.
Right. And then they kind of figure out a way to communicate with it and engage in some basic, and even Spock says it's difficult and so forth. And I think, he does a great job, Nimoy, in doing this voice. So you can tell when he's kind of in Horta mode.
Yeah.
Because he's not speaking as himself. He's hard to communicate with. At one time, Kirk has to be like, shake it off, break out of it,
Yep.
And so there's this sense that communication with this thing is hard. It's not like he adopts a pleasing form and then carries out a conversation. Talks about your past and, hey, remember that time you really were like jonesing for the hot dogs? I remember back, on Claygon 3. Well, I really jones for the salt. I got to admit. Instead, the salt monster doesn't communicate,
Right?
And the Horta does. So
anyway, all of that to say, where I was going with all of that was, I think that Shatner is at his most like Shatner-esque in this episode.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He's it feels a lot like his Wrath of Khan persona. Mm-hmm. He's a little more like lighthearted with things. It's great. But so I wrote this. Speaking of Shatner and his most Shatner, I wrote this exactly how he said this line, which is in this scene that we were just talking about. He goes, "How about this? A creature who lives deep below us in the rocks. Oh no. Oh, it would have to have some form of iron plating." You know what I mean? It was like, that's exactly how he's, not quite the inflections, but that's, pretty much exactly how he says it. You know what I mean? I was just like, that is amazing. And anyway, I have more examples of like awesome, like lighthearted Kirk in this episode. But again, I don't know if some of that was maybe because, he was like trying to tell everybody, hey, I'm cool. I can do my job. Let's not like everybody be falling all over me and, whatever else because of my dad. So anyway, we find out that there are two types of phasers. This is a new thing we've never heard about before. We got phaser 1, which is what everybody usually carries around. But then there's also phaser 2. And perhaps phaser 2 is the answer. Spock can modify these phasers to go up against silicone. Kirk asks Spock to speculate, but he refuses to give McCoy anything else to scoff at and chooses to contemplate it further because he's already kind of gone off the deep edge already, he feels like, with his silicone monster idea. He checks in on Scotty, who's, as always, doing my best.
What you get, like, is a missed opportunity, again, because we're writing the scripts, at 3 a.m., on
amphetamines.
On the eyeball there. So,
yeah.
McCoy objects to the possibility of silicon life, right?
Right.
And Woody, instead of just engaging in contradiction, which is the lowest form of argument, as I recall John Cleese telling us.
Yes, exactly. Yes, it is. No, it isn't.
Instead, he could have offered some like medical reasons, right?
Right.
The necessity of this and the necessity of that. And he would have only had to have offered 2 or 3, and you go, well, he's a doctor. He knows what he's talking about.
Yeah.
And it would have been the kind of thing where Spock's like, can't refute your logic, doctor.
Exactly.
And then that, you get these opportunities where McCoy gets to say, never thought I would have lived to hear it.
Like I said, Kirk's down there talking to Scott at the reactor, and again, another awesome like Shatner Kirkism where he's like, he tells Scott, be kind to her, tender love and care, kisses, flatter if you have to, but keep this thing running. I love it. Kirk then briefs the men, telling them to start at level 24 and work their way up. Apparently, Kirk's men aren't too smart either because we have them split up. Now one of them is on their own again, and boom, he bites the dust. And he, too, is too scared to fire his weapon. I don't know what's going on with all these people, too. This is a crew member, a security guard. He should know, like, that should be his first instinct. Fire first, ask questions later.
Exactly. And so, you could have had the situations where, as they mention later, there's nothing more dangerous than a wounded animal.
Yeah.
And as I recall, was it the Ranger Manual or the Survival Manual? It argued not to shoot at bears. It only makes them angry.
Right, exactly.
And that could have been the situation. So he does shoot, but his shot isn't long enough, right? Yep. Or maybe it's he's shooting too many shots and some of them are wild, but he only makes the Horde angry and it attacks. You also could have gotten some nice scenes with some tension and drama if you had two guys who see it, shoot at it, but it disappears. And now they're hearing it. Oh, it's over here. No, it's over there. No, I hear something over there.
Is it in the walls?
It's surrounding us. Where but where is it? Oh no! And like, was it over here? Well, I think it's over there because they talk about how fast the thing moves, right?
Right.
And then suddenly, one of them gets attacked without the other guy, and he shoots at it, but it disappears into the cave. And he approaches, but there's steam, and he looks, and he can't see anything, and it's like, well, that would have been cool, and it wouldn't have taken that long. Whereas one guy by himself, you're kind of like, do these people never learn? And I understand there's a certain amount of dramatic necessity. We got to show that the thing is dangerous. It's got to kill a man. But do we got to leave a guy standing by himself while some giant comes and throws him into a pit?
Yeah, exactly.
Or the Horde attacks out of nowhere,
Well, even funnier,
Buddy system.
Buddy system, exactly. So Kirk and Spock find the crewman burned into the ground, and quickly Spock finds the hole in the wall. No machine could have made this tunnel. So it's only now where they're figuring out that, this thing moves through walls. Okay, that explains its speed. So, maybe it's not super fast, but if it can cut through walls, then, hey, it doesn't even matter there. And then the Horta slithers out of another hole. So we may have talked about this before, but hey, let's talk about it one more time. By today's standards, obviously these effects are not that scary, right? The big blobby Horta thing. I always hear about, like, in the 60s that kids would be scared of Doctor Who, right? They'd jump behind the couch because they were too scared of Daleks. And it's funny because I don't know if this is, I just grew up with like Star Wars being the first movie. And so not only were the special effects, because I was 4, right? So not only were like the special effects amazing, but I also knew, because there was so much behind the scenes making of stuff for Star Wars, right? If you recall, even back in 77, hosted by Joseph Conrad, that, like, I even understood that it's like, that's a rubber thing, right? It's not really a monster, so it doesn't scare me. So what is cool is about seeing that Horta slither out of the tunnel is that there is actually a little bit something kind of gross about it, something a little like blah, blah, blah. So I can just imagine that kids in the 60s seeing that for the first time, that they might be covering their eyes or, jumping under the coffee table.
Good job, in the Hitchcock way. They didn't show the monster till late.
Yep.
There was an awful lot of, and then the camera gets blurry up in front, and you're like, well, something's going on, but I can't quite tell what. And then, he burned to a crisp.
Right, exactly.
You're like, what is that thing? We can't see it.
So they both fire at it, and it retreats down another tunnel. I don't know what I'm talking about.
That's what it does.
Yes, it tumbled down the tunnel, yes. Yeah. Well, it was hurt. It lost part of its body. Another great, Kirk moment here, Shatner Kirk moment. They're looking down the tunnel, and then one of the crew members runs up and goes, "Oh my gosh, did you see it, sir?" And Kirk is like, "Yeah, we saw it." Just the way he said it was awesome. I was like, I love it. So good.
Did you get a shot at it? Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, so then they pick this thing up off the floor, and again, this is just, I know it's the 60s, I'm being way too picky, but there's like no weight to this thing that they're picking up, right?
Yeah.
And you can even hear the squeaky part of the foam when they pick it up. So it's just like, yeah, you're just like, yeah, whatever.
I was attacked by aliens just the other day, and I got a piece of it right here.
Dumb.
Yeah, there's no, not only is it like just a piece of foam, but it's not even a gooey piece of foam.
Right.
Right? it's not dripping. It's not bloody. There's no
But even if it's supposed to be rock, right, or whatever it's supposed to be, it doesn't look like it has any heft to it at all. It looks like they could literally, like, just bat it in the air with their hand or something.
It's a pumice creature. It's made entirely out of that light volcanic rock. The whole thing.
Oh, that could maybe.
That whole monster's like 10 pounds. You just kick it back down the tunnel. It's gonna go.
Right, exactly. So they know they've wounded it now, and then Kirk tells his men, "Remember now, be careful, because there's nothing more dangerous than a wounded animal." Dun, dun, dun. There's your
Everyone
bear.
split up and go their own way.
Yes, exactly. There's your bear reference right there. Yeah.
That's right.
Nothing worse than a wounded bear. Commercial. Back to it. Kirk reiterates to his men that the creature is wounded. Oh, all right. Don't forget. We got to let everybody know. Spock now tells Kirk that he only has one life reading on the creature. But with all these tunnels, it's clear that there must have been once millions of creatures. If is it indeed the last of their the last of their kind, it would be a crime against science.
I like his crimes against science. It's not genocide. It's not a crime against life or against, the autonomy of beings. No, it's a crime against science, because then we won't get to study it.
Kirk decides that the creature must die, and Spock, too, says that he sees no alternative. Kirk's back in front of the troops, rallying them again. Spock then mentions at the end, and make sure that we capture it. But Kirk belays that order. He says, no, we're going to shoot to kill. After his team leaves, Kirk says, that's right. There's 3. Kirk says, I gave no such order. Spock tries to talk Kirk into, talk him out of killing the creature. Exactly. Science. But Kirk then instead stops him and decides to send him down to help Scotty. Kirk tells him that, hey, with the both of us together, the creature attacking us could be bad. I need to keep one of us safe because, we're the command crew. You're my second in command. Spock decides to tell him the odds of what it would be. And it was over 2,000 to 1 that they would actually
which is probably
both die.
What they separated.
Right.
But as they're working as a team, those odds are probably more like 3 and 1.
Right. Kirk then allows him to stay. All right, fine. We'll work together on this. Just make sure you follow my instructions. Scott then calls them and says, hey, the pump is kaput. We got to get out of here. Kirk calls for an immediate evac of the miners, but Vandenberg, who's with Scott, tells him that some of his men will help hunt the creature down and use clubs if we have to. They've been using phasers all along. It hasn't done anything to the creature. And here now they're like, oh, no, we can use clubs. It'll be fine. It's going to be great. Don't worry.
Well, now we know that it's made of foam.
Yeah, exactly. We heard you pick it up.
If only we knew it was phaser-resistant foams, we would have been using clubs long ago.
Exactly. Spock suddenly gets the feeling that they are being watched, which is funny because there's something that's actually cut out of this episode. It was a really cool part. Did I skip that part? Maybe I did. But there was a scene that was cut. You actually knew that the Horta was watching them and also understood that Kirk was like in charge because he was the one barking orders, pointing to people where to go and all that kind of stuff. So that was the reason that it caused the collapse to happen when Kirk was by himself, was because it knew that Kirk was in charge and figured it might be the only way.
Kirk is like a coolant pump.
Apparently.
It would have been cool to have like a moment where you're kind of, where he gets up to the wall and makes the wall really thin, and he pokes a little piece through, and you just kind of see into the room, but you can't understand the.
Yes. Whatever that was. Yeah. Anyway.
Well, it's like the Horta is you're watching through the Horta's view.
Oh yes, but he can't understand what we're saying. I thought that was the Horta talking. I was like, why even have him talk?
Now the humans are talking, he can't understand.
So a little bit later, Kirk sends the men with the clubs to join the Enterprise crew. So now there's a pairing of one miner with one Enterprise crew member. They get to a junction. There are 2 tunnels. What should we do? Kirk says, well, there's 2 tunnels, 2 of us. Tension mounts as the 2 of them make their way down the tunnels. They see more and more of those silicone balls, nodules. The creature then collapses the roof on Kirk. For a minute, Spock is worried that something has happened to Kirk, but Kirk says, no, I'm fine. But then the creature comes out and heads towards Kirk as we go to commercials. Back to it. Kirk holds up his weapon, but the creature does not attack. Spock calls in to tell her that the tricorder has realized that the creature is near. Kirk assures him that he is right. In fact, it's right in front of me. Now here, Spock tells him to kill it. And Kirk says, but I thought you shouldn't. I thought you said you didn't want me to kill it. I thought you wanted me to keep it around. No, your life is in danger, Jim, he says. He calls him Jim there.
Yeah, so Spock is clearly reacting out of friendship.
Yes, exactly. He calls him Jim a lot in this episode.
If it puts the miners' lives at risk, let's keep the creature alive to study it. But if Jim's life is at risk, by all means, kill the thing.
Exactly. Spock makes his way towards Kirk.
I mean, we're kind of making light of that, but Kirk has done the same thing many times when it's merely a crewman, right?
Yeah.
He's like, oh, colonists have died. That's very sad. Like, Ensign Smith is dead? Oh, totally change the plan. We're going to bombard the planet,
Yep. Totally true. Kirk tries to communicate.
Even think back to like the source material, Captain Cook in the Pacific or Horatio Hornblower. And that's the kind of stuff that did happen in the Pacific, right? Is that, the British crew gets off and it's like, oh, look, it's the natives. Ha ha ha. Oh, you violated a taboo. We must kill Ensign Smith now, club. Whoa! Bring up the muskets. Give me some cannon.
That's right. Let's take these natives out.
You gotta show the natives who's boss here. You don't take out an ensign because some taboo was violated. That's not how it works.
So Kirk tries to communicate with it, but obviously he can't. But it does turn around so we can see where it's hurt. Spock then enters and raises its gun at him, but Kirk tells him to back off. No. Kirk references the silicone balls. Thousands of them. Spock then thinks for a minute and says, fascinating. And then you see Shatner do a double take. He's like, what's fascinating? Spock suggests that he does a mind meld, and he does so without touching it. But all he gets is pain. Pain! So pain. Spock finds that. Then the creature uses its corrosive acid on a rock and says, no, kill I. What does that mean? Says Kirk. Does it mean we shouldn't kill him, or it's not going to kill us? We also find out that it's called a Horta. Kirk calls for McCoy to help the creature. Spock attempts to reestablish contact with the creature, but this time he says, "I'm going to have to touch it to get to the depths of it." Meanwhile, we find out that our crew is holding the miners back. He says, "Tell them to stay back." But when McCoy gets down, make sure you let him through. The mind meld begins. The Horta is calling the people murderers, monsters. McCoy shows up, and Kirk tells him to help the Horta.
You get this beautiful reversal, right? You see things from the Horta's point of view,
right?
It's
monster
great.
Again, yeah. The term monster being spit back at us, basically.
Yeah.
Yep. McCoy says, "How do you want me to help him? I'm a doctor, not a bricklayer." So then there's the mind meld goes on for quite a long time.
And McCoy's kind of incredulous when he first sees it.
Yeah.
It's like there's a scene in Discovery where Ash / Voke is, gambling with the Klingons, and I think there's, some, maybe there's some like drug use going on. He's like totally living the Orion Klingon decadent lifestyle, and like Michael Burnham's like, what the hell is going on here?
Yeah.
This is crazy, right? And that's the kind of thing that McCoy comes in and is like, what are you guys doing? This is weird.
Mm-hmm.
We want you to like heal it. What?
So the Hordem tells them where the cooling pump is, because they finally made a good contact between the two of them. It's in the room of tomorrow, and tells Kirk where it is. So Kirk enters the room of tomorrow and finds many of the silicone nodules on the floor, broken, open, like eggshells. The creature talks of dying. McCoy calls aboard and tells them to send something down. Kirk comes back to the unit with the eggs and shows Spock. The Horda's kids were being killed by the miners. And at this point, the miners overthrow the security guards and bum rush into the room. Two of them raise their phasers, but as they do, Kirk yells, "First person to fire is a dead man." Vandenberg yells back, "That thing killed 50 of my men! Well, you've killed thousands of our children." Spock goes on to tell us that the Horda lives in every 50,000 years until one is left to watch over the eggs, and the millions will hatch again. She only fought back as any mother would, says Kirk. Kirk tells them that they can live in peace with the Horda. Hey, they move through rock like we move through air. It's their nourishment. They're the best miners around. And I think you'll find yourself a little more profitable. At which point Vandenberg's like, okay, yeah, maybe that'll be good for us. Spock announces, however, the Horta may die. And then, out of nowhere, with clay-covered hands, Bones speaks up. He won't die. I think I've saved him. I'm beginning to think I can cure a rainy day.
Like, what a bizarre metaphor is that?
I don't know, but I love it. I can cure a rainy day.
Okay.
We find out that he's fixed her up with some concrete that they have on board for temporary housing. Back on the Enterprise,
I
Kirk
love what
calls
he was
down.
asking for it, too. It's like, yeah, I need, that box of X-27. Don't ask what I wanted for, just send it to me. But you can imagine being the guy on the ship. The doctor is asking for, like, a pallet of concrete. Like, what?
What is he doing?
The doctor wants it, like, concrete?
Right? It's crazy.
What is he, like, going on some kind of crazy bone setting,
Apparently. Back on the Enterprise, they get a call from Vandenberg. He says that they've already found vast reserves of gold, platinum, and many other Earths, he says. Boy, those miners are really good once you get past how ugly they are. Spock says, that's funny because the Mother Horda said to me that our appearance is revolting. But she said she could get used to it. McCoy says, oh, well, she didn't happen to make any comments about those ears of yours, did she? Spock says, I did get the impression that she thought that they were the most attractive human characteristic of all. I didn't have the heart to tell her that Kirk says, she really liked those ears, did she? Spock says, the Horda is a remarkably sensitive and intelligent creature with impeccable taste.
Impeccable
Kirk.
taste.
Kirk says, because she approved of you, Spock. Really, Captain, my modesty, Kirk interrupting, does not merit close examination, I'm sure. Love it. And that's how that episode ends, with the crew of the Enterprise on their way again. Back to the money situation here, with extensive planet sets being required and delays due to Shatner's absence. Devil ran over Star Trek's mandated 6-day shooting schedule and the maximum budget of $185,000 per episode. This episode cost $192,800. The first season deficit now growing again up to $83,000. So a lot of people really like this episode. This is one of William Shatner's favorite. He calls it a terrific story, exciting, thought-provoking, and intelligent. James Doohan also picked this as a favorite. Leonard Nimoy, too, thinks it's one of his favorites, saying called it powerful as it dealt with racism and intercultural conflict.
Yeah,
A fear of something that we... Go ahead.
It doesn't gloss over it. So, we get some episodes, like the one with the half-black, half-white people who are fighting with the half-black, half-white people.
Yes.
No, he's totally ridiculous. Look, he's black on the left hand. No, he's ridiculous. He's black on the right hand. And where there it's kind of dialed up to 11. It's a little bit over the top. We're gonna that point it rises more to the level of we're gonna hit you over the head with it.
Yep.
But here, these problems are real and they're integral to the story, because encountering truly alien life really would be difficult.
Yeah.
So the fact that they spend a long time going, it's a monster, you just got to kill it, and then realizing only in the third act, oh, wait a minute, it's a mother, it's protecting its young. I understand that. Can we communicate with it? Well, with some difficulty. Do we understand what it means? Not even when it writes do we understand what it means, because we're like, its grammar's weird. It's like talking to Yoda. And so those are, they feel real, authentic, that we would have these difficulties in understanding and communicating with alien life.
Yeah. And also, finally, Entertainment Weekly chose this as number 6 in their top 10 picks from the original series. Cinefastique also rated it in their top 10 list as well. So there you go, another episode down. Now, it's funny. I was telling Jamie this, my wife, after I watched the episode last night, that, this is obviously a very classic episode. This is one that everybody talks about. It's on a lot of people's top 10 favorites.
Yep.
It's an important episode because it gives us the, one of the clear ideas, like we've talked about, of, finding out what the creature wants as opposed to just killing it without a second thought or glance. It's not shoot first, ask questions later. It's ask questions and then decide if we need to shoot. Yeah,
which is why a lot of the characterizations that Captain Kirk is shoot to kill is it's either a parody or it reflects the kind of, this is our starting presumption, right? We're here to protect the miners. The miners have been here for 50 years. Suddenly they've encountered something dangerous. We need to protect them.
Yes.
Lots of people are depending on this. This is necessarium. It's got to be,
12 planets.
That's right. And then it's only when he's really confronted with the monster that he's like, well, I'm ditching that plan.
Yeah.
I'm going with something else. Which in a sense is the real Captain Kirk.
Which is what you cut out.
That's the real Captain Kirk.
Yeah.
Up until then he was going with the flow, right? He had orders to protect this necessary mineral. The miners were clearly, you got to kill it. It's a real problem. Yep. And he's like, everyone seems to want the thing dead. Okay, I can do that.
Yeah.
I can kill a monster.
But with all of that said, it was a pretty wacky episode. You know what I mean? All those things that we pointed out. I mean, again, it was written in 4 days or whatever on amphetamine. Yeah. So, take it with it what you will. But, as I kept watching it, I was just like, there's some logic missing here. That doesn't quite work. Why aren't we going out in groups of 2 or 3 to make sure that everybody's protected?
Right,
like there's just so many weird plot holes in it that I was just like, is this really supposed to be the classic episode? And again, I understand on the bigger ideas that yes, it is, but certainly when it comes to do we want every episode like this? I think the answer is probably no.
Yeah, there is a certain rewatchability problem in terms of you probably don't want to watch this episode once a year.
Yes.
It so one of the things that I've been talking about that I think would be great since the 80s is computer generated characters. Right?
Yeah.
It saddens me that the moment at which computer-generated characters seem likely, people are like, oh, you can't make episode 9 with CGI Princess Leia. That would be wrong. Like, no, that's exactly what we want from now and forevermore.
Right.
To be able to go back and to take this episode and fix some of the plot holes. You turn around and you make a 52-minute episode?
Right.
So you make a 106-minute episode in which, you solve these problems, right? You include the scenes where you've got the two guys, but the thing seems to be everywhere. It's over here. No, it's over there. We shoot it, but it disappears into the wall. How does that, you run up to look at it, but no, it's over here.
Yep.
You have stuff like that. You have, some of the reference, it's the only coolant. We've never needed another coolant. Or, well, he got the last one last week. We're down to our last coolant. It makes more sense. It gives you the sense of urgency, like, well, we're on our last leg. In the same way that in the Mud episode, they're burning through their lithium crystals.
Yes.
When they're trying to protect Mud's ship. It's not like, well, we only need the one lithium crystal. Instead, they're like, there goes the lithium crystal. There goes the lithium. Are we sure we want to protect this ship? No, we got to protect it. He's in danger. We got to save him. And you add some of those, just a second thought, some fridge logic. You go back and think about it one more time, and you're like,
yeah,
you can fix some of this stuff easily. That'd make a cool episode, and we got to make Khan a 3-episode arc.
Right, exactly. Well, I know you are continually hopeful for the for some more original Sean Connery James Bond.
James Bond,
movie,
that's right.
So. Exactly.
Well,
imagine
some 1965 William Shatner, some 1964 William Shatner. What was it like?
Yeah.
Can you imagine the episode where Pike is like, all right, he's your ship, moving on to my new command. And like Shatner's new, and Spock's the old favorite of the outgoing captain, and like, what's our relationship gonna be? Yep.
Well, and that would be like totally cool for that next season of Discovery, to have the original Pike come in and be all CGI. That would be cool. That's not what they're going to do, but that would be cool.
Well, yeah, they could get a new actor because it's all, you got a new Sarek, you got.
Yeah. It's the same thing like with doing the new like Han Solo movie, now you're going to have your young Han Solo, now you just need to start getting your young Princess Leia, your young, your new young Luke. And you're gonna be set.
That's right. Although we gotta watch out that Lucas doesn't give us 20 minutes of Womp Rat shooting.
That's if he was doing that, because there's not much else you could do with a young Luke Skywalker movie.
That's
you know what I mean? That's all it would be, is him shooting Womp Rats in his T-16 back home.
And going to Tashi Station.
Yeah, picking up those power converters. Got him. All right, well, that is all I got for this episode. Anything else you got for this episode? Anything we haven't hit? Yeah, I know. Kind of hit everything. I had a lot of notes in this one. It was crazy. Perfect. All right. Well, hey, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for listening, as always. We are on the YouTubes. We are on the iTunes. We are on the SoundCloud. We have our own website that'll announce whenever we're releasing a new episode. You can always download it there, too. Oh, look at all these ways we're making it easier for you to watch and listen to this. Aren't we the best? That's all I got for this week. Like I said, next week we got Errand of Mercy. Dun, dun, dun. Another one which I don't necessarily remember a lot about, but definitely remember some of the people who are in it. So we'll see how I feel about this. I know that there are some Klingons involved, I think, too, at least in some way. That's it. Hey, I'm Matt saying goodbye. And as always, say goodbye from Houston, Ken.
Live long and prosper.
There we go. Perfect. And we'll talk to you all next week.